Trump's MO since coming into the political arena has been going after Muslim immigration. Remember, he talked about back in 2015, ban all Muslim travel to the United States. That was back in 2015. He, of course, had an executive order back in 2017 that going after Muslim migration, it was struck down by the courts, and he had to revise it. It was allowed to stand. This is much different. What he's talking about here is, Kristen noted here, he's going to re-examine green cards for 19 countries. As you can see on your screen there, the 19 countries from African countries, Middle East, some in South America. Evan, how is he going to be able to implement this? Because they're talking about a loyalty test as well. Is this a real thing that they're going to actually try to implement all this and get rid of people who are, green cards, you're here legally. This is legally issued by the government. You are legally allowed to be here. Can they actually do this?
Well, they'll certainly try. And look, we've seen them do this before where they come up with an emergency power that the president says he has, and then dare the courts to try to stop it. And so what we expect, obviously, with this is that they're going to run into the same trouble that they ran into with the Muslim ban. In the end, they were able to basically make that legal by admitting that the rights of people who are permanent residents matter, right? It's not just U.S. citizens, but there are rights that come with being a permanent resident that they cannot just override. And so they'll have to battle it out in the courts if they want to do this. What it does, though, is it really puts a mark on all of these Afghan immigrants, especially ones who did so much. They sacrificed a lot. They worked with the CIA. This unit, there were thousands of members of this unit that this suspect came from, the NDS, that worked in Afghanistan directly for the CIA. There's a reason why they got sort of expedited entry into the United States after the fall of Afghanistan. And so those people were vetted a number of times. But there's been a struggle, too, to try to make sure that the vetting was appropriate. I'll tell you this. There were examples of people who essentially bought backgrounds from brokers, and so the problem with Afghanistan has been that there's no functioning system to be able to check the data, that background check information, and it's been a problem that has worried the FBI and DHS since the fall of Afghanistan, of Kabul.
Tamara, you cover the White House. What are you hearing from inside the White House about how they plan to respond?
This is very much in line with the way that the president and people in his administration, people like Stephen Miller, have been talking about immigration. President Trump, in his remarks on Wednesday night, brought up Somalia. That is not an accident. That is something that the president has been focused on recently and that he is emphasizing. You look at refugee policies where the White House wants to bring in white people from South Africa who they say are being persecuted. They don't want to bring in other refugees. The refugee program has been severely restricted under the Trump administration already. So in a lot of ways, this is a terrible event that has given them a sort of a peg to do a lot of the things that they were already doing or wanted to do. And it does come at a time when the president's approval ratings are in a really bad place, including on immigration. But this is a realm of immigration where he has had more traction than some of the other areas.
And speaking of the refugee issue, this is what he said in a couple of late night posts last night. Right before midnight, he put out these posts here on Thanksgiving night. He said, "This refugee burden is the leading cause of social dysfunction in America, something that did not exist after World War II. Failed schools, high crime, urban decay, overcrowded hospitals, housing shortages, and large deficits." He's very clear where he's going with this.
Well, I like the way that Tamara put it. It is something they want to do. It's a long-term project. This administration, with the 4 years it has been given by voters, wants to transform the immigration system, one, so there's a larger deportation force, so that immigration courts are seen as deportation courts, as they call them. They're doing more hiring right now to make that happen. They're trying to build the capacity for mass deportation because it wasn't there in the first term. You've covered this. So many things that they're doing right now are taking the lessons of the first term where they were stymied by a court or stopped by a court, going to a more favorable court this time, a point with we saw this with the Muslim ban. It was a 5-4 decision that upheld the president. That's a 6-3 conservative court now. So they like their odds, but there is a long-term strategy here. what are the political risks of it? For Trump, he's not on the ballot again. For Republicans, we already saw them lose ground with Asian American and Arab American voters in Virginia and New Jersey. Just huge shifts back away from the Republican Party. This is not the Republican agenda that won Dearborn, let's say, in the last election. This is more like what he wanted to do in the first place. And voters don't get a veto on this. It's going to be fought out in the courts. In Congress, look, final point I'll make is why was it easier for some Afghans to get here if they cooperate with the Americans in the war? Was bipartisan vote of Congress that made the Allies Act. Mike Johnson voted for that. I don't think you're going to have any Republicans saying that was a good idea. Now the Stephen Millers of the party, who already were controlling the narrative, are going to control the politics too.
Very few Republicans voted against that.
Yeah,
in
I
fact,
think 16.
Yeah, something like that. So, part of this post, there were just a number of things that are eyebrow-raising, to say the very least. This is what he said about, he said, refugees from Somalia are completely taking over the once great state of Minnesota. He said that there are Somalian gangs looking for prey. As he said, people are staying locked in their apartments. He called the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, quote, seriously retarded. He went on to call Ilhan Omar the worst congressman slash woman. He ridiculed her for wearing a hijab, and she said that question about whether she's in the country illegally.
Yeah, a lot of that is problematic.
It's racist.
I was just going to say it's rooted in racism and xenophobia.
Yeah.
A little bit of misogyny possibly in there, or sexism in there as well. And I think that there are people in the White House who believe that the best message that Donald Trump has right now is his anti-immigration message. That's really the only thing that he has to counteract all the concerns people are raising about why voters why his approval levels are so low. They're worried about the cost of goods. They're worried about safety, yes. They're worried about the cost of housing. They're worried about health care. And he's not addressing much of that directly, but what he is doing is saying indirectly, the immigrants in the U.S. are causing or contributing to all those problems. I don't know if that's going to work with the American people, because they've seen the immigration crackdowns, but they also have seen that grocery prices aren't going down as a result. Their health care issues aren't being resolved, even with the crackdowns at the southern border. So yes, he can do more on immigration, but I don't know if that's going to address what American voters really expect him to be working on.
Just real quick, I think just focusing on this event, I think part of the anger you're seeing from the president and from the White House is the fact that they would like to blame this on Joe Biden and everything on Joe Biden as they've done, but they own some of this.
Yeah, and just to that point, I want to show that what Trump said yesterday when he was asked about this situation, the fact that the suspect was granted asylum in April of this year.
There was no vetting or anything. They came in unvetted. And we have a lot of others in this country. We're going to get them out. But they go cuckoo. Something happens to them.
Your DOJ IG just reported this year that there was thorough vetting by DHS and by the FBI of these Afghans who were brought into the U.S. So why do you blame the Biden administration for what this man did?
Are you stupid? Are you a stupid person? Because they came on a plane along with thousands of other people that shouldn't be here, and you're just asking questions because you're a stupid person.
And that's Nancy Cordes of CBS News, who's a very good reporter and asking a very legitimate question. And you see how defensive the president is.
Right. It's a factual question. It's true. It is not a stupid question, and the president should apologize to her, because it is part of the problem is the president owns some of this, and that is just a fact. And look, I mean, one of the things that I think when you're in politics and you're a leader is you go back and you look to see what we could have done differently. That's what usually happens. In this case, they've decided that they're going to just lash out and apparently going to punish like perhaps millions of people in the process because, again, they don't want to accept that part of what happened here happened on their watch.
Yeah.
And look, you don't have to say that it's anyone's fault per se, but you can try to fix the vetting and make sure that this doesn't happen again.
All right, we'll see a lot that will come in the weeks ahead. We'll see how much is actually implemented and how much of it is just talk.